The AP's Ben Thomas has been digging a little deeper with an industry expert.
Lundberg, publisher of the Lundberg Survey, notes oil prices were already going up, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine are driving that price.
It's the second biggest exporter of oil to Saudi Arabia.
And it follows the failed global output. The gas prices pause a little, go yet higher, Lundberg says.
The only likely thing is for them to drop right now.
Tom Brady's retirement lasted 40 days. Tom Brady says he's returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for his 23rd NFL season. He says he's realized his place is still on the field and not in the stands. He says he loves his teammates, and his supportive family made this all possible, he says. I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 Chicago traffic update.
In West Chicago, we have a report of a crash at 59 and Main Street. On eastbound I-80, there was a crash in the area near Chicago Street just before that point, but that's cleared from that area.
All right, here we go.
Right now, Joliet area. Inbound Kennedy Expressway, trip time to downtown is 18 minutes. Outbound is 20. There's a touch of congestion approaching. An hour, 24 minutes, 390 to downtown. Stevenson, 22 minutes from the Veterans Memorial to Sabo Lake. Ryan, 12 minutes from 95th to downtown. 94 in LaPorte County will have some construction starting today east of 421. It's long-term work scheduled for the end of June. I'm Jim Talamonte.
The Rick Smith Show, live weeknights from 8 to 10 p.m. Look at what's happening. The Rick Smith Show on WCPT 820. Everyone is talking about it. Chicago's progressive talk.
I struggled with symptoms like frequent gas and stomach pain for years.
I was all the time with daily diarrhea.
At first, I thought it was what I was eating.
I kept thinking it was stomach issues.
So I did my research and talked to the doctor, and we finally uncovered the truth.
It was actually EPI.
You know, I'm going to have a very interesting lawyer on, Reverend Dr. Yuri.
60 seconds.
On your food.
It can lead to
She went to
symptoms like
every day,
diarrhea,
she
gas,
attended
bloating,
every day of
stomach
Jussie
pain,
Smollett's
weight loss,
trial.
oily
She's an
foods.
attorney here.
EPI symptoms can be confused with those of
And it just, she's also very familiar with Judge Lynn, who actually was never elected.
Being more open with my doctor about the
He
severity of my
was
symptoms
appointed,
and how often they were happening.
which is
But
interesting.
there's good news.
And she said his behavior, as she could see, she said it was outrageous even for him.
And schedule a visit or call with your doctor to ask, could I have
It was
EPI?
interesting. It'll be interesting to hear.
Talk, WCPT 820.
Stand by, we're coming up.
Talk, where facts matter.
My name is Tom.
My name is Cindy.
We give to and volunteer with United Way at our community free health.
10 seconds.
I'm in many and going to the right places.
We don't just wear the shirt.
We live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to Live United. Brought to you by United Way and Ad Council.
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. Can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. It's Monday, March 14th, 2022. I'm Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about President Obama sending him much love today. He tested positive for COVID, but he's vaccinated, he's boosted. He said everybody get vaccinated because he has a mild form of COVID, but he's still out here, everybody, and anyone can catch it. Anyone. So let's send him some love today. And we're going to be talking about the no-fly zone. Many people are getting polled. Are the polls really reflective of how people feel? It depends upon how you are questioned. So we're going to be talking with Jim Narakas of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting to find out about how when you change the phrasing of the question, people's minds change about a no-fly zone. Then we will be talking with a very, very fascinating lawyer, attorney April Prayer. She attended every day of the Jussie Smollett case, and she's got some wonderful insights. And we'll be joined by attorney Robert Patillo and attorney C.K. Hoffler talking about that particular case. But we're going to compare it with two white men, one of whom who was a former sheriff in Memphis, Tennessee. This gentleman in Tennessee he was found guilty of raping a 14-year-old over a 20-month period. He was able to plead out and get no jail time. Then another gentleman met an 11-year-old on an app, and he had sex with her, an 11-year-old. He pled out, and he serves no jail time. And that's happening a lot. So I want to know, are we applying the laws in a way that's fair? What about Crystal Mason? Her mother told her after she had served time in jail, you need to go vote. She asked the judge, okay, can I vote? I have just come out of prison, and she told her story. And the judge said, of course you can vote. 5-year prison term. We've got to look at how these laws are applied, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody, let's get right to it. Chicago, we're going to have a high degree. Today it's going to feel like spring, 56 degrees, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 40 degrees, snow showers. The Bulls will be facing off against the Kings tonight. The Timberwolves will be facing off against the Spurs, and March Madness begins. Well, it already started with Tom Brady. He's coming out of retirement. You didn't think he was done, did you? How exciting is that, everybody? In the NHL, the Predators, well, they were triumphant over the Wild, 6-2. Russia's invasion of Ukraine continues to impact the global fuel supply, pushing average gas prices in the U.S. above $4.33 a gallon, although gas prices, to be fair, were spiking before this conflict in the Ukraine. Uber has announced it will begin adding a fuel surcharge starting Wednesday to help its drivers offset their higher gas prices. Saudi Arabia carried out its largest mass execution in decades. 81 men, including 7 Yemenis and 1 Syrian, were executed Saturday for terrorism and other offenses. A late winter storm here in the United States had more than 42 million Americans across the eastern U.S. under winter weather alerts. Heavy snow and strong winds in the Northeast led to trouble on the roads and more than 1,300 canceled flights, everybody. COVID chaos, everybody. It's just fueling so much. We're going to be talking with doctors Deborah Verholden and Shanina Knighton about the outbreak of STDs. That's right, in this age of COVID. Half of Americans quit their jobs last year to make a career change. Did you know that? Half of Americans. Are you among them? If you are, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. 1 in 3 Americans are taking pain medications every single day. What is going on with Americans? We're in a lot of pain physically, we're in a lot of pain spiritually, which is why we start the day every day with the good news. And so we've got Pastor Todd Geary from the Douglas Memorial Community Church. He's also vice president of Rainbow Push. It's always a joy to be with you. Give us some good news today, Pastor Geary.
Well, good morning, Santita. I'm not sure. That news had a little mix to it. We got Tom Brady coming out of retirement and STD. I don't know what to do with that. I'm just like, this is going to be an interesting week. But
deal with it.
Y'all pray for me. You know, I'm a little sleep deprived. We had to spring forward an hour this weekend. So, you know, I'll be like this probably until November when the clock sets back. But anyway, we do what we can do. Hope you're well, Santita. Hope you had a tremendous weekend. Glad to be with you as always on Monday morning. So let's get to it. Good morning, Chicago. Good morning, Twin Cities. Come on. Time to get up. Time to get moving. Get up. Put your feet on the floor. Feel the coolness of the towel coming back at you. Guess what? It's time to get back to the business of LIFE. You guessed it, life. As you feel the morning coolness, I need you to take a deep breath. Fill your lungs with that good life. and get ready to do what you have been created and purposed to do. So as you get going, get that morning beverage, that morning Joe, that OJ, that water. Got to drink that water and stay hydrated so you can do what it is you need to do. Santina needs to talk to you about something. You know, I'm a girl dad. It's Women's Month. And I came across a TED Talk. And the substance of the TED Talk was about the differences in the ways we raise sons versus daughters. That many times we impose on our girls and our women the expectation that they have to be perfect. But then we teach our boys that they are really programmed to take chances. They take risks. And so in the process, it builds this inner program of hesitancy because the expectation is you got to get it right all the time. I wanted to raise it, particularly, I was raised by a very, very strong mother who helped me to overcome this notion of not having to get it right all the time. But I want to say, too, in honor of my mother in Women's Month and being a girl dad, I want to say to everybody, here's the lesson this morning. I want you to embrace the strength that is you and not the perfection that is expected of you. Here's what I mean. Sometimes the expectations that you be perfect, flawless, mistake-free, they come with the weight of the expectations of the world placed on you and sometimes can be more overwhelming than the difficulties and the adversity that may be facing you. And so there are three things I want you to realize this morning. One, you don't have to be perfect. Don't worry about getting it right all the time. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. I promise you, if you live longer than the last 15 minutes, there is some sort of setback, difficulty, and maybe even a mistake that's going to be part of the ingredients of who you are, the uniqueness that you bring to the world. Number two, remember, just because you're not perfect, it doesn't mean you don't have what it takes. You do. You have what it takes to face any challenge, to accomplish any dream, to fulfill your purpose. And remember this, the key to it is resilience. Don't you remember what they told us as kids? If at first you don't succeed, try again.
Until you do.
What I want you to remember on today.
Mm-hmm.
Failure is not a reflection of your value. Failure is often the catalyst that triggers your resilience. And always remember, failure is never final. Just because you don't get it right doesn't mean you have to stay stuck. Failure is never final unless and until you quit trying. So go ahead today as you get ready to pursue a new week. Whatever happened on last week, what may have happened on yesterday, if you didn't quite accomplish all you wanted, don't worry about it. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off. Remember, ultimately, you're not alone. Yeah, that's the good news today. God is with you. That's what God tells Joshua at the beginning of his assignment. Be strong and very courageous, for I am with you wherever you go. That means you don't have to pause. You don't have to hold back. You can tap into your inner strength and get back to the business of being you, being your best you, not the perfect you. You don't have to be perfect to be great. You just have to be persistent. Now be persistent today. Go get them today and change the world without apology because you have the courage to keep on pressing. That's the good news for the morning. Go change the world. I'm cheering for you. Go show them what you can do. We'll talk soon.
I love it. Pastor Todd Yeary, Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, Maryland. But we also have him here in Chicago. He is the vice president of Rainbow Push, sending him much love. Thank you for that. Failure is not final, everybody. How about that? How about that? Failure is not final. That is my takeaway for the day because I needed that today. Everybody, let's talk about a couple of things. We see that in COVID, we've seen another health crisis, STDs. But first, very quickly, Dr. Deborah Furholden, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University School of Medicine. Of course, Dr. Shanina Knighton, research scholar, registered nurse, infection preventionist at Case Western Reserve University. Hope you beautiful ladies, my dear sisters, had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Got a little surprising news, but thank God he's doing well. President Obama actually has COVID. And he said, I had a scratchy throat for a few days. And, thankfully I'm vaccinated and boosted. And he is recovering nicely. Dr. Deborah Verholden, what is our takeaway from that? I mean, anybody clearly can get it, and you can get it right now. Dr. Deb, are you on mute?
Says she's there.
Well, let me go to Dr.
I was
Knighton.
being really brilliant too. I was just giving you all of it on mute. I was giving all the good stuff. Good morning. Good morning. I got to do what Pastor Yuri said, put my feet on the towel and feel the cold running up through my feet. Yeah, I think, though, this brings up an important point, right? So nobody is immune, right? Nobody is immune. Anybody can get this virus. And there's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to how severe people's illness is. The only thing that we know is that vaccinated people tend to have less severe illness, right? So everybody said when the Omicron variant emerged, the first news we heard about it, the same time we heard about it, it was like a don't worry message that accompanied it because it's mainly mild symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? The data don't jive with that. Right? The data don't jive because even the overall number of deaths and hospitalizations went off the charts during Omicron, right? So this notion that, mild symptoms, no big deal, not a problem. Because guess what? For the people for whom they had more than mild symptoms, it was a problem. You know, so even though the rates are at an all-time low, I tracked the data in my county. Mm-hmm. We had 22 cases in the city of Flint last week. I don't think we've been that low in a long time. I can't remember the last time our case counts were that low.
Well, let me ask you this.
We're still in it.
Because because we are still in it, but one of the things that we found out a lot of things, in this particular crisis, in this pandemic, that if your baseline health was not robust, you were at greater risk of death as well, because we didn't have a vaccine for a year. And they found it, and they were really drilling down on this in Europe because they have a large population of Africans, of South Asians, of dark-skinned people who, when we go to these cooler climes, we become vitamin D deficient. They said, wait a minute, they started sending out vitamin D in England. So in addition to these therapeutics, should we still be vigilant about really making our baseline health more robust, Dr. Verholden and Dr. Knighton? Because that's something that you all have been pushing too, eating well. You said moving 30 minutes a day, right, Dr. Verholden?
Yeah, that's the ideal. That's the ideal. If you can move your arms and legs and get your heart rate up 30 minutes a day. And that might be daunting for some people. Mm-hmm. You know, my doctor just gave my daughter the recommendation that she do 150 minutes per week, right? So this is one of those things where I'm trying to motivate and encourage and inspire people to take the reins of their own health, because there really is a lot that people have in their hands. You know, we spend more on healthcare than any of our peer nations, yet our people tend to live sicker and die younger than our peer nations. So there's something that's unrelated to healthcare. There's something that's unrelated to a lot of the things that we point to that people do have some say over. And don't get me wrong, we started this conversation in the vein of, helping people to get empowered around how to, stay healthy during COVID. Mm-hmm. And the best thing that people can do for themselves in COVID or not in COVID is to take the reins of their health and be healthy, and those are, it's not a, magic formula. It's not a, you move your arms and legs, you get good sleep, and you fuel your body well, so I just really think that that's a message that we have to keep bringing forward, and then deal with the inequities that exist that prevent people from being able to do that. And I always tell people, eat the highest nutrient-dense diet that you can afford. And I was surprised because people said, well, what's a nutrient-dense diet? And I said, that's a diet that's high in vitamins and minerals and whole foods. Those tend to be the things oftentimes that don't come with a label, right? Like fruits and vegetables and lean meats, things like that. And then the reality of it is, if you live in, close to me, there's no grocery store nearby. People buy groceries at the Family Dollar,
you don't even have the option to buy fresh fruits and vegetables in the Family Dollar. And for many people, the bus is like an hour-long ordeal in the city this size because you got to take the bus to the main bus depot and then out to wherever you want to go from there. You know, so we do have some challenges and barriers that people will face to even those things. But I do encourage people, the things that are in your hands, take them on and take them on fully. And also make sure you have a primary health care provider. Why? Because Dr. Deb is saying, hey, I tell people, I mop my floor like no one's watching. And I was doing this yesterday. I actually used the Swiffer. And so I was like, you know, I had a lot of work to do, a lot of house cleaning. And I said, I'm going to be mindful. And I put my Apple Watch on, and I just got that heart rate up while I was doing that work. And then about 20 minutes in, I was done. So I just turned the music on and danced around my living room and just did my best to keep my heart rate up for 30 minutes. That's what I had in me yesterday. That's my own personal commitment. But that's the kind of stuff, as you learn your body, as you really begin to navigate your health, as you work through that stuff with a healthcare provider, you'll get that sweet spot for yourself. So my daughter said, that's cool, Mom, but my doctor told me 150 minutes a week. I said, well, then, by all means, she's on your health team, too, so go with what your doctor said.
Amen.
But there will be no harm. I've never heard of anybody having a problem because they move their arms and legs for 30 minutes a day.
Well, that's what you're saying. 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. That's 150 minutes. It just sounds daunting when they give you 150 minutes at the top. Let me go right to this story. COVID chaos fueled by another public health crisis, STDs. There was an initial dip in the cases of gonorrhea and syphilis, but now they're surging. Dr. Knighton, what happened?
Good morning.
I mean, we even lost ground on HIV.
Yeah, we lost ground on a lot of stuff, a lot of the preventative measures that, you know, were in place in order for us to reduce a lot of things, you know. And when I think about just sexually transmitted diseases just in itself, you think about how many clinics, you know, were not accessible to be able to pass out protection or provide education. Even on college campuses, the fact that college campuses were closed and kids were at home, you know, and I know these are young adults, but even still, you know, they're not having access to just be able to go get, you know, condoms or protection out of baskets. So I think that there was a lot of that was happening. Unfortunate. But as much as people would like to, let's say, encourage even abstinence, we know that that age range of even like 10 to 14, especially like even here, like in Cleveland, has some of the highest STD rates in the country. And it's this thing of where we tend to ignore that in regards to not only what are kids doing with their idle time, but what kind of education are they provided. And we've seen so many times that literally health be considered, and even gym be considered like, you know, on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to classes being taken, as well as some of the things that have been taken out of the classrooms because of funding. So I think this is just all collateral damage that's just sneaking up on us. And I say it all the time, but, you know, it echoes what Pastor Tish said in regards to COVID being a snitch.
Well, you know, I mean, now they're calling for, Dr. Deb, more monies for testing for these STDs. I mean, what's the remedy? What's the remedy? Because I've got to tell you, I'm trying to pick myself up off the floor when you talk about 10 to 14-year-olds having STDs. I'm like, wait a minute, really? That's something that we're going to have to really talk about one of these days.
Well, the problem is then they pass it around and they give it back and forth to each other. You know, out of respect, I will not share anything about my personal, you know, my children, but I am the mom of 3 now young adults, 20, 22, 23. So you can imagine, I was the neighborhood mom. I can tell you, I took countless children to STD clinics, and many of them had related sources of infection, you know, because the groups get sort of really small. And, you know, they're a lot more sexually expressed and free and all of that than I feel like my generation was. And I just found it so amazing that even partners giving it back and forth to each other, not recognizing you both have to get treated at the same time and not engage in unprotected sex again until you're both. So it's just.
Oh,
yeah.
I was just going to add on to that, too. Another population that we don't even talk about that has absolutely been on the rise within the last 5 years has been the elderly population. So they're also like another high offender of being able to pass it as well.
And Black women and HIV. That's something that we really need to talk about. Because, sadly, in our intimate lives, that is when people are the least disclosing. They're the least honest. So you don't know someone's sexual history, what their proclivities are, all of that. And a lot of people walk around with STDs and they don't know it, Dr. Deb, Dr. Knighton. You don't know. You don't know. So people are passing it back and forth. And particularly if someone has stepped out, husband, wife, partner, hey, boyfriend, girlfriend, they're not going to tell you that. Dr. Deb, Dr. Shanina Knighton, come on. They're not going to tell you. They bring that package home and there you go. Oh, everybody, please get yourselves checked. I guess that's another something we got to look out for in this pandemic. STDs, Dr. Deborah Holden and Dr. Shanina Knighton giving us some information today. Everybody, please take care of yourselves. Get yourselves checked. Let's talk about this no-fly zone. What is a no-fly zone? And have you been called? Have you been polled? If you've been polled, depending upon how they ask the question, that will determine the kind of answer you gave. When Americans know the consequences of a no-fly zone, they're less apt to support a no-fly zone. Got to watch it, everybody. Watching you, Deborah Thomas, out there in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's in the house. Got some dear friends out there. One of my best friends, she made her transition last July. Candace Simmons and her brother Hank Simmons and Dr. Sharon Simmons. There's her surviving family. Sending them much love. Got a lot of friends out there in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's in the house on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Dr. Deb, the brilliant one on mute. I was like, Dr. Deb, Deborah.
You would think after 2.5 years, 2 years, almost 2 years, doing it on Zoom, being on the, you would think, but no, that mute button is still not my thing sometimes.
Girl, it cracks me up because you're always so surprised. You're like, I just love my Dr. Deb, and I love my Dr. Knighton. Yes, because Dr. Knighton always sounds like she is about to have a class, and I love it. Well, I love it. But you know what?
Sending Jim Narakas through.
Thank you. I want to thank you all so much for being with us today. I want to expand this because, Dr. Deb, we really need to talk about kids and STDs and the elderly population and STDs. Don't you think we should do that one day?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
absolutely.
Maybe
and
tomorrow.
We had a spike in HIV in the elderly. And you know what a big part of that was linked to. You know that, right?
Can we do that tomorrow?
Yeah.
I mean, unless something else, because I think that's such a big deal. I really do. There was, I used to have a guest, I need to find her, because she, as one of our elders, contracted HIV and from her partner. And it's happening a lot, and it's really happening a lot with Black women. And we really need to talk about it. But it's happening to all folks. But I'm just saying, there's a sharp increase with Black women, and we need to talk about that. If there's someone you want to bring on tomorrow so we can expand the segment and talk about that, Dr. Deb, I'd really like to do that. You too, Dr. Knighton, because I think we've got to talk about that because no one is honest about that piece.
Yeah.
You know that. Come on. This is when people start lying, where you really need to be truthful. You're inside of someone's body, for heaven's sake. Yes, I did say that. So.
No, it's the truth. I agree. And it's actually, oddly enough, providing prevention education, like COVID prevention education, just because, there are, workers, like, there are sex workers and, that do that. And you also have people that are just promiscuous. And it was, questions that came up. How do I have sex safely, during COVID? And while, like, I can tell somebody I can't necessarily guarantee that, given the activities, but we can talk about preventative measures.
Please do.
Maybe screening measures and things like that. So, and again, nothing is like end all be all, but it's like, how do you at least, even entertain the conversation so that way some of these things don't.
60 seconds.
Let's walk through it tomorrow. But let me say hello to Jim Narakas from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing well.
I'm so glad. Please give my girl Janine my love today.
I sure will.
Bless your heart. Okay, ladies, we're going to get right to this because I'm so glad that you mentioned that. We used to have to deal with this when I was in college. Because when I was in college, Reverend was running for president, and they made sure that they called the Howard University dorms to see what we thought. Should he run? Because that was, for like several months, that was a question. And my friends were disturbed because of the way they would ask the questions. Because first of all, they dismissed him as a candidate. They said, well, he's not going to win. I mean, they were actually calling, like Peter Hart and Associates, that's a big polling firm in D.C. So a lot of people worked there from Howard. And a lot of people worked there from Georgetown, GW, et cetera. And they were very upset.
10 seconds.
Very upset. Hold on one moment, please.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars, Samantha Banks and Dave Dowley and Linda and everybody over on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia and Mark Stevens, they're on the Santita Jackson and Friends official Facebook page. Renee Criswell, and if you can get over to YouTube, please do the Santita Jackson Show YouTube page. And I want you to call us at 773-763-9278. You can text us there as well, 773-763-9278. I have one of my favorite people on with us today, Jim Narakas. He is the editor of Extra. Everybody, you should support FAIR. That is the magazine for fairness and accuracy in reporting. If subscribe to their newsletter, please give them your support because they really help us they give us a media education every single day. They report on the reporting and they test out the accuracy. And, and we all benefit from that, particularly now that we're in a state of war, everybody. I mean, if you look at the cable news, that is what they lead with, and that's the through line on all of the news shows now. They're talking about war. But they're not talking about with peace. They're not talking about peace, or they're not speaking with peace advocates. So we've got a lot to discuss today. So let me just step back because there is a wonderful piece in the newsletter for fairness and accuracy in reporting, which I've already put out on Twitter and on my Facebook page. What polls about a Ukraine no-fly zone really tell us? Well, what is a no-fly zone? And of course, Ukraine is calling for one. NATO and the United States have said, oh, no, we do not want an all-out war with Russia. And that is what this will give us. And now we're seeing that Russia, and we always knew this, but now we're seeing that Russia and China's alliance is much deeper and stronger than many of us have really initially thought. I don't know why they think that, Jim Narakas, since Russia shares a border with China. But talk to me, what are these polls and how are they conducted? And what do we find out depending upon how the question is phrased?
Well, David Moore is sort of our polling expert. He used to be the managing editor of Gallup and now is sort of semi-retired, but commenting on how polls are done and how they are spun for fairness and accuracy in reporting. And he was interested in the polls that showed widespread support, not majority support, but sort of plurality support for the idea of a no-fly zone in Ukraine. A no-fly zone is when you shoot shoot down any planes that fly over a country. It's designed to hamper military operations by denying air support. You sort of control the skies over a war zone, and thereby make it harder for a war to be carried out. But it does imply active hostilities with the country that is flying over the war zone. And in this situation, it implies active hostilities with nuclear power, with the largest nuclear force on Earth. So it's it's a pretty serious undertaking. And one of the things that he noticed is that if instead of saying should the U.S. enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine, you ask should the U.S. military shoot down Russian military planes flying over Ukraine, which is another way of putting the question, the opposition to the idea goes way up. Though it's interesting that in neither case do you get a majority either way, either for or against. You get a plurality against it when you frame it in terms of what it actually entails. And that sort of suggests that people are not, as we're discussing this, possibly world-ending decision, people are not getting a full picture of what the implications are. I suspect if you put in the question, should the U.S. shoot down Russian military, planes belonging to Russia, a country that has nuclear weapons, I think that you would get a quite different answer, because the assumptions are buried in the question. They're not spelled out in the question. I think that when you're contemplating going to war with nuclear power, it's something you should think long and hard about, and that the public should be informed completely about what the implications are.
We're talking with Jim Narakas. He's the editor of Extra, which is the magazine for fairness and accuracy in reporting. You need to support fairness and accuracy in reporting, because that is what they do. They help us to see beyond the headlines, and really they dig down into why stories are written, how they're written, and how they're biased. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763. WCPT. What do you think about the no-fly zone? I mean, are you supportive of it? Are you not supportive of it? Do you think that the corporate media, Jim, frames this in a way where we really understand what a no-fly zone would do? I mean, not just people who call us and poll us, but when we're looking at cable news, when we're looking at regular commercial news, are they explaining what a no-fly zone really is and what the consequences are?
I think that it is, typically when the United States has had a no-fly zone, it's against countries that have a very weak military compared to the United States, like Iraq, for example, or Serbia. And so it's something that can be done at very little risk to the United States. It's a fairly painless operation. And I think that people have gotten the idea that no-fly zones are sort of an easy way to protect civilians, and therefore, the feeling is, why not? And to do this against a country that very much has the ability to fight back is an entirely different proposition. And no, I don't think that is spelled out in the reporting, in the discussion of this proposal. I should note that there is not a great deal of support among politicians of either major party for a no-fly zone, because I suspect that there is more understanding in the professional political class what it really entails.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let us know what you think about this. I mean, because like you said in the House of Representatives, as was written in this piece, in David Moore's piece, the House of Representatives kind of gives you it helps you to take the pulse on what's happening in a given district from all over the country. It is the people's house after all. And there's not been overwhelming support at all for a no-fly zone. How would you grade the media, the corporate media, in their reporting of this story? Are they being fair? Are they, no pun intended, are they being truthful?
Well, it's interesting. I think in some ways this war is being covered more like we would like war to be covered in general. There are some aspects of this war that are of the war coverage that are we would like to see in the coverage of every war, like the focus on the danger to civilians. There is much more attention being paid to the cost paid by ordinary people in this war than in, say, the Iraq invasion, which was carried out by the United States, where you very rarely saw civilians talking about the danger they were in, the fear that they had, the sorrow that they felt at the loss of their loved ones. That was not a big item on the agenda of the news media. That was not something that they were particularly interested in. But it is, in modern war, civilians almost always pay the highest price.
Sure.
And so it's appropriate to be looking at the civilians and what the war is doing to them.
But do you think
selectively to do that when an enemy state is the aggressor, and not to do that when the United States is the aggressor, gives people a distorted idea of the role of their country in the world, and the contrast. It's you're accurately portraying the damage done by your enemy while concealing the damage done by your own country, and that gives you a distorted picture.
Well, do you think that we're getting these human stories because they're European? Many reporters have tripped over themselves. They've really betrayed themselves. They've said, look, and Prince William even said last week, we support Ukraine. War is alien to Europe. Now he's ignoring his own family's history in the making of most of these modern wars. But then, because we have Yemen, we have wars all over Africa, we have wars all throughout Asia, South Asia. We have that all the time, but we never, even in Iraq, we didn't hear those stories. We only heard stories of people who favored the American invasion. We really typically do not tell the stories, particularly when they're people of color who are living in these war zones. Do you think that's it?
Yeah, the statements that come out from professional journalists about their reactions to these pictures can be kind of shocking. It's sort of like they say, the quiet part loud, as they say. I think maybe the most striking quote was from Charlie D'Agostino on CBS News. He said, but this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully, too, city, one where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen. As Trevor Noah said on The Daily Show, that's what you say when you're choosing words carefully?
Yes. Yes.
What would be the careless way of expressing that?
He was just being honest. Prince William was being honest. He said, look, in Europeans, we don't do this. No, you do it every place else. you keep the wars off your shores. Goodness gracious.
It does reflect the propaganda strategy that the West has employed in order to justify war for several decades, if not centuries, by dehumanizing the targets of U.S. war in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America, and to make it seem like it's normal and natural for those countries, those parts of the world, to be at war. I should mention Asia, considering the role of the United States in wars in East Asia, where you are able to. The U.S. government has carried out wars in all these places with, devastating consequences to the civilian population. But we as the media are our eyes and ears in these situations, they turn away for us and avert our gaze from what is really the consequence of our country's actions. And racism is certainly a strategy, a tool that's used to make it seem like it's okay to be inflicting, mass damage on civilians. How many times have you seen a story where the United States, in conducting a drone war over a Middle Eastern country, has wiped out a wedding party?
Oh my gosh!
These are stories, and they're never a big deal. It's never like a huge front page story like U.S. destroys wedding party. It's a story tucked away in the back of the paper, and it usually follows the cycle where the first news is that the United States denies that it did it, and then a few weeks later there's oh yeah, we did that story. But it's treated like it's not a big deal for a country to have people celebrating, a key life moment being wiped out by foreign robot weapons.
Wiped out by us. Wiped out by us. And we don't visit their families, and we don't see their tears. We don't see their pain. We don't look for it.
Right, and this is done because the strategy for making this seem okay largely involves the idea that these are countries, they hate each other. There's always violence there. This is more violence, and the responsibility of the United States for bringing violence to these countries is erased, and you don't worry too much about it. Though something that to just complicate this a bit, when the United States decided that it did want to go to war against a European country, Serbia, the coverage looked much the same. There was not a lot of focus on, even though Serbians look and in fact are a lot like Ukrainians. They're not totally unrelated people. There you could drop bombs on Serbian cities, and the news media were not compelled. The U.S. news media were not compelled to go and talk to the families of Serbians who had lost their lives, lost their loved ones to U.S. Military attacks. Somehow, the fact that this was happening in a European country did not make us grapple with the reality of people's lives. There was there was kind of a dehumanization that went on. Because racism, it's an arbitrary construct to dehumanize the people that you want dehumanized. And so if you wanted to treat a European population as less than human, that can be done. It takes more effort because there's not centuries of tradition to draw on of dehumanization. But it definitely is possible.
Do you think we're getting the fullest story? I've not heard a lot of discussion about in American corporate media about the partnership, the No Limits Alliance between Russia and China. Um, we've not really heard a lot of follow up, in particular, asking the Chinese about really what they think about this conflict. We've heard a statement and that's it. Do you think that we're benefited by not hearing from more people? I mean, even the pushback in the global South. I mean, Africa and Africans have said, "Whoa, I'm not going to jump in this like this because I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of issues with imperialism, imperial powers." And you heard the Kenyan ambassador at the UN a little more than a week ago say, "Look, wait a minute, we're all products of the machinations of colonialism. We have they named our countries, they gave us our borders. We stand with Ukraine, but this is part of an ongoing problem that we've got to resolve." I mean, we're not. Are we getting as full a story starting with China? I mean, I get the sense that we don't really understand the depth of their relationship and where this could go, Jim.
I think that the failure to recognize that the United States is not as all powerful as it once was. I think that the U.S. news media don't do a good job of conveying that, and don't really have an interest in conveying that. The interest is in presenting the U.S. empire as a powerful force, as a benevolent force, and as something that in the normal course of events would keep on going forever. And the fact is, the United States is a relatively small part of the world. The gap in wealth between ourselves and the rest of the world is rapidly eroding if it's not gone. So to expect that the United States will forevermore have this dominant role in world events it's not realistic. It's based on wishful thinking that somehow this will keep on going forever. I was struck. There's a little story about the Washington Post changed a quote in the story from Palestine solidarity to Palestinian territory solidarity. And this was, it was a mistake on the Washington Post part because you're not supposed to change the words within a quote, but it reflected the house style of the Washington Post, where you're not supposed to say Palestine, you're supposed to say Palestinian territories, which is a way of making them seem less important and more marginal, and make it okay that they don't have independence and so on. And when people talk to and this is very common in U.S. media to use this style of not saying the word Palestine, avoiding saying the word Palestine, I should say. And when the media outlets justify why it is that they don't say Palestine, they say, well, it's because Palestine is not a recognized country. And I find that really interesting because Palestine is recognized as a country by most of the world. And there's actually a good map on Wikipedia of what countries recognize Palestine. And it's recognized by virtually every country in South America, in Africa, in Asia. And it's not recognized by North America, Western Europe, Australia, and Japan.
Which is a minority of the world population.
Right, right. So it's really widely recognized as a country, but it's not recognized as a country by the countries that are recognized by the U.S. news media as being important. It's very much a view of the world through the wrong end of the telescope, where the little countries look big and the big countries look little.
Through the wrong end of the telescope. I've got about a minute and a half here. What should we be looking out for because we're only 4.5% of the world's population, which is something that thank you for highlighting that. And the outsized impact that we've had on the world militarily, socially, economically, that's really no longer the case. The largest economy of the world is China. It is China. And while America is helping Ukraine, China could very well decide to officially help Russia. I mean, the country on the other side of their borders. What should we be looking out for? Got a minute and a half for you.
Well, I think that the U.S. role is still an important one in world events, and I think that part of what Farah's been talking a lot about is trying to examine what the U.S. role has been in this conflict and what NATO, the U.S.-led alliance, has been doing in regards to Ukraine. And it's not to say, I think that people in wartime, it's very difficult to not get into an us versus them mindset where we're all supposed to line up on one side or the other, and if you are critical of Russia's invasion, then you can't look critically at what the United States has done to contribute to a state of tension that has helped produce the invasion. That either, one side or the other has to be fighting for good, and the other is the emblem of evil. And I think that if we want a peaceful solution to this, a diplomatic solution to this, it really helps to think what the United States could have done differently in the lead up to this war, and are there steps we could take now that would help produce the kind of climate where it could end. And I think that's something that you're not going to be hearing from U.S. news media, and you really need to be looking at alternative sources to get a fuller picture of what the history that brought us here has been.
Jim Narakas, editor of Extra, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting's magazine. Please support Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. They do so much to serve you, to serve me, to serve all of us. Thank you so much, Jim. Jim Narakas and Janine Jackson have been at it for decades, and quite frankly, no one's better at it. Of course, we just love all that you all have been doing. Jeff Cohen and Norman Solomon, icons in the space. We thank you for all of your magnificent work down through the years. Let's talk about Jussie Smollett, everybody. Let's talk about Crystal Mason. Let's talk about two white men who raped children who have no jail time. That's happening in real time, like right now. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Jim Narakas, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That was fun.
Oh, well, look, I always, I just learned so much. So, I love this. This is like my favorite part of my day. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, I got to call him. So I said, no, because, because I think it's important. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he absolutely means well. I said, he and I kind of went back and forth about how the global South is viewing this. And he was like, the world is supporting this. I said, no. That's not exactly true. I said, a lot of people have a lot of questions. I said, you're looking at Western Europe, and they've got some problems. I said, and you're looking at Australia, which is off on an island somewhere, and you're looking at the United States. This is not where the world is. Africa has pushed back. Southeast Asia has pushed back. There's that doesn't put me on anybody's side. It's just like, let's just report what's happening here so that we can not have a war where you'll blow up the world. Because it seems like, I'm watching war porn on TV, and it's just very disturbing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard not to report from a side.
But at least bring other sides on. There are no peace advocates on TV at all. None. You don't hear Medea Benjamin in the New York Times.
No.
I mean, come on. It's dangerous to only present this side. Then you feed into people's fears and their mistrust and distrust of mainstream media, of corporate media. It's that's all that it's doing. I watch Washington Journal whenever I can, and I catch snippets of it because I go and watch it online after I get off the air. And to hear people in that first hour just share their thoughts. There's a lot of mistrust out here. Most Americans do not trust the mainstream media, the corporate media. They don't.
Sending Attorney Prayer, Attorney Hoffler, and Attorney Patillo too.
No, it's bad. We have media for a reason. We need to be informed about what is going on in the world. And if you can't trust the institution that is supposed to be telling you what's going on in the world, you're going about your life blind.
That's what I'm thinking. I think that where they are, I think what they're doing is very dangerous. And so don't put it on me. I didn't do it. These people did it. Yeah. So I want to thank you so much for being with us today, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait to have you back.
Cool.
Blessings to you. Blessings to you. Thank you so much always.
Take care, Santita.
Blessings. Give Janine my love.
I will.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Attorney Prayer?
Yes.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Good morning.
Good morning. Attorney C.K. Hoffler?
Good morning. I'm here.
Okay. I wanted you to meet Attorney April Prayer. And this is Attorney C.K. Hoffler. I've spoken about each of you to one another. And of course, we have Attorney Robert Patillo. Attorney Patillo?
Good morning.
Good morning. He's a brilliant civil rights lawyer. He's the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. But both of them, he and Attorney Hoffler, have radio shows on WAOK, which is the iconic black talk radio station in Atlanta, akin to WVON. So she has a show that comes on every Tuesday at 10 o'clock our time, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. He hosts his own show from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. So after they hear you, hopefully they can, you all can connect. And of course, CK is the immediate past president of the National Bar Association, which is the largest, as you well know, this is your space, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world. And she's also chair of Rainbow Push. So there we go. But Attorney Prayer, brilliant. I have so enjoyed following her on just in social media as she's just really helped us to understand what happened with the Jussie Smollett case. She was there, CK and Robert, every day. So she'll help us to see this, and then we can talk about, of course, these men who raped these children who have not had any jail time. I sent you all those. You can't make this stuff up. Come on, you rape a child. You can plead out on raping an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. Hello, I'm not a lawyer. Is anybody there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think our minds are boggled just as much as yours is.
Okay, I just had to ask. I said, okay, you can try to overthrow our government January 6, 2021, but you're charged with a misdemeanor. I'm just trying to find out what's going on, everyone. Attorneys. So I'm gonna say my little bit, and I'm gonna step back like a good little host will do. So stand by. Here we go. Oh my gosh. Woo. Oh, here we go. But thank you all for being with us today. This is great. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to come to you first, Attorney Prayer, to set the table for us, and then of course. Okay. Here we go. Stand by.
10 seconds.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am free.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Monday, March 14th, 2022. It's a joy to be with you today on the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT. We used to be Air America, but today we are WCPT. Tell everybody about us. We are not corporate media. We are your media, the people's media, and AM 950 radio. My family to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I am Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet me on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please go over there and like and subscribe, and please share the show. Everybody, Eric Penn, Dave Dowling, Deborah, who wants to host out of Brooklyn, reach out to me, Deborah. Let's see what we can make happen. And on and on and on. Barbara, Francis, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, everybody, please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, but also share this show. If you're on the official Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, please share this show. Do it right now, please, everybody. Go on and share the show, and spread the word. We're going to be talking about the Jussie Smollett case. Really, we're talking about justice. We're going to be talking about justice. We're looking at Crystal Mason, who served 5 years because she was told by the election judges that she could vote, and then she got sent to prison. What is that? And then we have two white men who raped an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, and they were able to plead out and get no jail time. And Jussie Smollett, right now, as he left the courtroom last week, he said, "I am not suicidal." Well, guess what? He's been put in a psychiatric ward of Cook County Jail, and they have said in his record that he is apt to self-harm. That is absolutely untrue. So we have to put this stuff out here, everybody. It's absolutely untrue. His whole family is still here. He's not that guy. And we need to be mindful of that, because we have a place called Holman Square here in Chicago, which was modeled on a CIA black site where our people go in there and they have been disappeared down through the years. I'm putting it out there. So we need to make sure that he is all right. And make sure when you get loved ones who go into prison or go into jail, please go visit them. Let the prisoners and the prisoners and the prison guards, let the system know that you love your people and that you stand with them. It gets them protected. I'm Santita Jackson. Let's get to some of these headlines so we can get to the rest of this show. Chicago will have a high of 56 degrees. It'll be positively spring-like, everybody. Mostly cloudy, though. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 40 degrees. Snow showers. Sending you all much love today. The Bulls will be playing the Kings, and the Timberwolves will be playing the Spurs. And guess what? We're in March Madness, and shockingly, Tom Brady has come out of retirement. You know he couldn't stay away. You know he's got to get one more Super Bowl ring. I'm not mad at him. Sending much love to William Hurt, the Oscar Award-winning actor. Tender age of 71, made his transition, they said, of natural causes over the weekend. Sending them much, 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 much love. In Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine continues to impact the global fuel supply, pushing average gas prices in the U.S. above $4.33 a gallon, although gas prices were quite high and were rising before this invasion. Uber has announced that it will begin adding a fuel surcharge starting Wednesday to help its drivers offset its gas prices. A late winter storm had more than 42 million Americans across the eastern U.S. under winter weather alert over the past weekend. Heavy storm and strong winds in the Northeast led to trouble on the roads, and more than 1,300 canceled flights. Sending much love to President Obama today. He tested positive for COVID-19. Everybody, COVID has not gone anywhere. He said, quote, "I've had a scratchy throat for a couple of days, but I'm feeling fine otherwise." Our forever First Lady, Michelle Obama, has tested negative. We're sending them much love and many prayers. Indeed, they are vaccinated and boosted, and so then they also lead healthy lifestyles. So that helps a whole lot too, everybody. So let's get right to it. What is going on in our justice system? Judge James Lynn, who is he? We do know that he was not elected. He's the judge who oversaw the trial, who wouldn't turn on the cameras, and he wouldn't let us see what was going on during the trial, but he let us see the sentencing. Interesting. We do know that hundreds of people stormed the Capitol January 6th, 2021. We also know, or maybe many of you don't know, that most of them will not even see prison terms. Why? Because they were charged with misdemeanors. Yes, I wish I could play that Foster Silver song from so long ago. It's just a misdemeanor. You try to overthrow the government, and you're just charged with a misdemeanor. Okay. And so the video of Jussie Smollett's outburst in the courtroom, in which he said, "I'm not suicidal. If anything happens to me, no, it wasn't me." It's been viewed more than 600,000 times. And interestingly enough, he's been put in a psychiatric ward of Cook County Jail. And they have put in his record might self-harm. That's not true. That's not true. In the meantime, you have a couple of cases that I think bear watching. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Robert Patillo, and our special guest today, who will not be a guest after today because she will be back many more times, Attorney April Prayer. Joseph Malia, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He met an 11-year-old girl on a dating app, and he had sex with her. He's been charged with child kidnapping, statutory rape, and statutory sodomy. And he later admitted to committing these sex crimes with this girl. And he was able to plead out and get no prison time. None, none, none. A former sheriff in Memphis, Shelby County, former Tennessee Sheriff's deputy, Brian Beck. Over a 20-month period, they said it was sexual activity. He was having sex with a 14-year-old girl. He was able to plead out. Now, mind you, they couldn't really press the case because of the pandemic, but he was able to plead out and he won't face jail time. These are two white men. So I want to know what you think about this. And then we look at Crystal Mason, a black woman who had served some time in prison, and her mother pressed her during the election and said, "Look, you need to get out here and vote." And she said, "I don't think that I can." She said, "Yeah, I think you can." So she went to the polling place. She asked the judge, because the judges are supposed to know exactly whether you can vote or not. They're supposed to know these things. Well, guess what? She was told by the judge, "Yes, you can vote." Well, she's got 5 years of jail time because she could not, because of a technicality. You know what? Let's talk about this, but let's start with Jussie Smollett. I just had to give some of those examples. We got brilliant Attorney Robert Patillo with us, civil rights lawyer, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. We have got the former president, the immediate past president of the National Bar Association, and of course, Chair of Rainbow Push, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Starting with you, though, Attorney April Prayer, who is a brilliant criminal defense lawyer here, and many of you have seen her on on Facebook. You've seen her on Instagram, really breaking this case down. She went to every day of this trial, and so I want to sit back. I don't have any popcorn, but I said you certainly do have an open ear. What did we see? Or what should I say? What I didn't see. What did you see?
Well, at the trial, I saw, four brilliant black attorneys representing Jussie, along with two other. I know three of them well, and then they were assisted by some other attorneys, and I think they just did a fantastic job of representing Jussie and working with the evidence that they had. So that's what we saw. But overall, what we saw was a prosecutor who was hell-bent on really showing that the sitting Cook County prosecutor, Kim Foxx, had done something wrong. And that's really what Jussie's case is about. And that's what a lot of people miss. That whether he lied or he didn't lie, he got caught in the crosshairs of some political nonsense between Kim Foxx and the people who are there to take her down. And because Jussie's case normally, honestly, would never be charged as a felony, if it got charged as a felony, would quickly be reduced to a misdemeanor, and he likely would have walked away with community service. I'm saying if he had not been a celebrity, that's how it would have gone. So it would have ended much like his case initially did when the 16 counts were first dismissed. That was the way it was done was a little bit unusual.
Well, hold on.
I can't get around that.
Well, no. Let's go back to that
result
beginning.
Would have been similar.
Well, no, let's go back to that beginning. Let's go back to the beginning, because, initially this was dismissed, right?
Yes.
Okay, take us back there.
It was dismissed. It was dismissed. So he was initially charged with 16 counts of disorderly conduct, and for whatever reason, filing a false police report falls under that category. So I know it sounds odd. Most people think of disorderly conduct as you have some type of outburst in the street, but this isn't that. It happens to fall under that statute. And so he was charged with 16 counts, and the 16 counts were dismissed. He was given a dismissal in exchange for community service. And also, he basically turned over his $10,000 fine to the county, and he was sent on his way. And then an investigation was started into what happened, because the way it was done was unusual. I believe that the case was immediately sealed, which doesn't happen, and that the records weren't available for the media to view, and that's really how it all got started. But the result is absolutely akin to what most people in similar situations with a similar charge would get. I've actually had cases that are very similar to Jesse's, where there was a person who was Black who said someone of another race attacked them, and either that person didn't exist or it didn't happen like they said. And oftentimes these are simply not charged at all. People lie to the police every day. So for it to get this far to even be charged is a big deal. But the initial resolution was probably the right one. And then after that, an investigation was launched. A special prosecutor was appointed. How that happened, I'm not even quite sure, because the judge who appointed him, I'm not sure, had the authority to do so. But they're both staunch Republicans. And Kim Foxx is a Democrat. And that's how it all began. Again.
I'm trying to figure out how he's in jail for 5 months. He'll have to live under probation for how long?
For 30 months.
Okay, so that's 2.5 years.
Which is also long. Yeah, and that's also long. Normally, for a first-time offender, they would get 2 years probation, not a single day of jail time, because Jesse is charged with the lowest level of felony offense in Illinois. It is very unusual for somebody with no background to get even a day in jail. Now, does the statute allow for it? Yes. If you get probation, the judge is allowed to also sentence you up to 180 days. But in 22 years of practicing, I've never once seen it.
We're talking with attorney April Prayer, criminal defense attorney based here in Chicago. We're talking about the Jussie Smollett case, but broadly speaking, we're talking about justice in America. The January 6th rioters, for the most part, have been charged with misdemeanors. Now, the case has been made that they were trying to overthrow the government because they were trying to stop the certification of the presidential election. Misdemeanors. It's a misdemeanor. Jussie Smollett, a felony. And then we have two gentlemen who, attorney Prayer, one raped an 11-year-old, the other one raped a 14-year-old, and they get no jail time. I know it's different states, but come on now.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out they're all from different states, but it also tells you how much control the judge has over their individual courtroom and their individual proceeding, and how much leeway they have when it comes to sentencing. Obviously, sex offenders usually, in general, don't get a pass. They usually don't get light sentences. But we're seeing a trend where white male sexual offenders are tending to get a pass. Like you mentioned, the Beck case in Tennessee. I believe it's, like you said, Mellie case in Missouri. And then there are others where there are, young men who are charged with raping multiple young women. They're usually in college. The judge is saying, oh, no, I think that the arrest was punishment enough, or, oh, the embarrassment of this case has been punishment enough. I don't want to ruin this young man's life. But whereas if it was a Black defendant in the same position, we wouldn't even be having that conversation. The judge wouldn't even give that consideration to that young man. And then you see somebody like Jesse, who's charged with a nonviolent offense. Really, the only person physically harmed was him. And still, he is actually actively serving time in Cook County Jail, which it's worth saying is one of the worst jail systems in the United States. And it, as far as I know, has had the worst COVID-19 outbreak, at least at the beginning of the pandemic. It had the worst pandemic outbreak in the jail of any jail system in the United States. So it's a very unsafe place to be. I actually have a lot of past clients who said that they would prefer to be in the Illinois Department of Corrections, any further downstate, than to stay another day in Cook County Jail. So that's how bad it is.
Are you not concerned that he said, I'm not suicidal? If anything happens to me, I didn't do it. And almost immediately he was put in psychiatric care. And now they entered into his chart that he might self-harm. Is that cause for alarm?
I don't know if it's cause for alarm. I think that people misinterpreted what Jesse said. For whatever reason, I understood when he said that in court, that was a nod to Sandra Bland. That was a nod to the number of people who are found dead in police custody every year. And that he, first, Jesse is an activist. I don't know him personally, but I do know that. I know that by going to court. I know that by meeting all of his activist friends who are there in support of him. And he's an activist, and he was bringing light to that situation and saying, hey, if something happens to me, if I do end up like these unfortunate individuals, you got to know right now that I didn't do it to myself. Because unfortunately, there is no mandatory reporting of deaths in custody in any systematic way. So if you die in police custody in one town, they might have totally different reporting procedures than if you die in another city. And so oftentimes we aren't even aware of people who die. Obviously, they have to report to the medical examiner, but they don't have to report to any systematic way that's tracked. And oftentimes those deaths are never investigated because it's obviously hard to go in and question a handful of people who were on duty and get them to admit to any wrongdoing.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what say you? I mean, I see a whole lot going on with our judicial system. I mean, as I've been thinking about Jesse, when I came across these stories about, a man raping an 11-year-old and raping a 14, another one, a sheriff's deputy at that, raping a 14-year-old over a 20-month period, no jail time. They were able to plead out and not get jail time. How does that happen?
Well, Santita, good morning, Santita, and good morning to everyone on this panel and to your listeners. This really reinforces the need for criminal justice reform on a federal level. So but putting that aside, what do I say about it? I think that, and I covered this on Jesse Smollett's case on Court TV. I covered the sentencing on Court TV, and this is what I said on Court TV, and I maintain it. There was a terrible miscarriage of justice, I believe, with the sentencing. And the reason why I say that is, and again, but it must reinforce everyone the power that judges have. Whether it's Judge Chu, who chooses to give Kim Potter what amounts to a slap on the wrist for killing Dante Wright once she's been convicted across the board by a jury, or when we look at what this judge did in Jesse Smollett's case. This judge really called Jesse every kind of, figuratively and literally, they've just called him every negative name in the book that you could basically say in court. And for his, because Jesse now has been convicted. So the one thing we can't change is the jury speaking. We may not like what the jury said. In fact, I really don't like what the jury said when they spoke, but I do, as a trial lawyer, respect when juries speak. I may think that the jury should have gotten some evidence that they didn't get. I don't know. I wasn't there. One of the handicaps that we had was not being in the courtroom. So when I do legal analysis, I can see for myself, not relying on somebody's interpretation of the evidence being laid, of emotions, and of the judge's judicial temperament. The judge is very deliberate, as you said, Santita, and closing off and not allowing people to see what was going on in his proceedings, but yet he was very intentional and wanting everyone to see and hear what he and others had to say in the sentencing. That's in his discretion. So what do I make of it? Miscarriage of justice. I think that there's a terrible inequity when it comes to sentencing of black and white defendants. A lot of times in some jurisdictions, you can almost kill someone or kill someone and, provide a self-defense, standing my ground, doing whatever, and you can get off. You can be acquitted or charges may never be brought. And then in other places, you can sneeze and you're going to jail for, a year or two. And by the way, 30 months of probation, that's huge. So there's a terrible miscarriage of justice here, Santina. I feel for Jesse Smollett's family. I wish he had not made that outburst. I will say that as a trial lawyer. I wish he had not done that because I think it compounded his problem. I really do.
How so?
Just looking at it.
I've got about 30 seconds.
Well, because that outburst to many made it seem as though he was very troubled. See, the impact, what he was trying to do, and as someone who does activism too, who does civil rights, I understood what he meant, but I don't think that was the way to do it. That's just because I think that it compounded his problem. And it made people think, not me, but a lot of people think, oh yeah, he's crazy, he needs some help. So exactly what he was trying to prevent led a lot of people, and I don't mean conservatives, I mean a lot of people who are open-minded and liberal and progressive, believe he really is a sick puppy.
That he was off the rails?
That outburst.
It's interesting because I took it the other way. I thought he was trying to shine a light.
Too, but I'm telling you, I'm there doing the commentary. Many people, black and white, believe that showed that he was really, truly troubled. And I'm saddened by that.
I'm saddened by that because I'm saddened by the fact that so many of us forget what the system is really like. In Chicago, we had a place called Holman Square, which was modeled on CIA black sites where people were disappeared. I mean, are you kidding me? That's absolutely nuts. So, and then you've got people the January 6th rioters, they were charged with misdemeanors, CK and April and Robert Patillo. Really, misdemeanors? You try to overthrow the government and you're charged with a misdemeanor, so you're not going to see jail time. Then you rape an 11-year-old, you rape a 14-year-old. Oh, wait a minute, excuse me, as a sheriff's deputy. And you are able to plead out? How dare you? What is this? This is uneven, but this is American justice, and this is why we need judicial reform. We need it. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Talk with this magnificent panel about this. Oh, while the smoke rises from my head. Back in just a minute. You guys, I had to reread some of this stuff about the January 6th, the insurrection. I said, wait a minute. They were charged with misdemeanors.
That's treason. No, but that's treason. That really is treason.
Yeah, at the very least, they should all be charged with felony murder.
Right. And so that is the uneven and inconsistent application of the law. And states can do what they want. But I really feel that, and I do understand Jesse's frustration why he was saying what he said, but I'm just saying, in the court of public opinion,
sending Chaparral through.
I would never have my client do that.
Oh, I know you now. Come on.
You said a lot of
he wasn't listening.
Right, and I'm sure they did counsel him, but my point is, they probably were like, oh, Lord, have mercy, Jesse, don't make it worse.
No. CK, let me tell you something, April. CK would have, now CK is the most elegant, refined woman. I don't know one more elegant and refined, but I do know she's a sister girl. She would have jumped across that table and wrapped her arms around his mouth.
It really would have. At that moment, I was like, what can the lawyers do? What can the lawyers do? Stop this. What's good is he's going into the system.
Oh, yeah.
So he's got to survive in the system. So I wasn't thinking about, I understood what he was doing from a civil rights, from activism, trying to save his life, but that's not the way at that moment when you're going into the system. So as I tell every day I preach, I don't even know if it resonates to my children, you got to live for me to help you. There is another chapter for Jesse Smollett, but that was just something that I wish he hadn't done, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have any recourse because there are a lot of things that can be done. I just wish that hadn't happened. And it underscores also that people are human. He felt he was going into a situation And he wanted to be clear, he's not suicidal. But the very thing that he wanted people to understand came off. I think it backfired on him. And I don't listen to the conservative pundits and all that, because I just don't. I don't feel that we have a difference of opinion. I'm talking about in circles where the opinion counts and matters. And not to mention, of course, again, as a lawyer who represents clients, that was not the finest moment. I understood it, but I felt instinctively they were going to put him under psychiatric care because of that outburst. And I felt even if they hadn't, the judge probably would have ordered it.
And you know what?
Because of the outburst.
Well, you know what? For me, but that's where we just have a difference of opinion. But I hear you. I absolutely hear you. But for me, he was in one of these situations where I don't trust this system, and I got to let these people know I do not trust the system. Because you remember when my mother was in Vieques in Puerto Rico, many people do not know Attorney Prayer and Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Patillo. My mother almost died in prison because she went on a hunger strike, and she refused to drink any water, even. Because she thought that the conditions in the prison were so deplorable. Because she went down there to protest the bombings in Vieques, where you have all these Puerto Rican children and mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters who are getting cancer because we have these military exercises down there. So when my mother was arrested, she refused to eat or drink. And she nearly died
30
there.
seconds.
But the thing is, and when they brought her into the courtroom on more than one occasion, and she was looking sicker and sicker, she said, "I'm not going to stop." And the judge looked at her like she was absolutely nuts. So, I hear you, but something's got to happen. Stand by. Robert, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, we're going to come to you.
Change the world, change the world. Can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. I want you to continue to call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Let's talk about the Smollett case. We're talking with attorney April Prayer, who was at the trial every day. She's got a tremendous board game. She's going to come back before the week is out so she can talk to us about that, about how you should be able to make your way through the system alive. Oh, it's too many things. There's too many things. What is the name of the board game very quickly, and how can we get it?
It's called Trials and Triumphs, and they can get it at justicejunkie.store. I spell justice different because there's a saying, there is no justice, there's just us. So it's JUSTUSJUNKIE.store, and it teaches teens about police encounters in a fun and interactive way that can keep them alive.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I can't wait for you to come back and talk about that. And of course, we've got Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Can't wait to hear from Attorney Robert Patillo to get his thoughts on all of this. But we've got Chapearl, our Pearl, down at the South by Southwest Festival, where she is making a presentation about her podcast, Somebody, and it is about to be turned into a television movie, is it?
Yes, it's in developmental stages right now, Santita, where we're actually trying to develop it into a TV show, and basically expand the narrative from the podcast to basically explore what we couldn't say legally in the podcast, but maybe bring forth some of the other elements and expand the characters that are in there. So it'll be an adaptation of the actual podcast and my real life story. And so what we're doing here at South by Southwest is actually making a pitch to the audience on how not only to start a podcast, do a podcast, and then change it over to TV or film. And so it's very interesting. I'm so excited. My panel is at 4 today, so send me lots of prayers. But I am still outside working with Celebrations by Us, Santita, and right now we're gearing up for our prom season. So give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. And we can handle your balloon arches, your hors d'oeuvres platters, as well as also your fruit tables. So don't hesitate to give us a call if you should need any assistance for prom or graduation season. Thank you so much, Santita.
Love it, love it, love it. Can't wait to hear about your experience at South by Southwest. It's one of the biggest festivals of its type in the world. Sending you much love, Chapearl. Let us go to Attorney Robert Patillo. Robert Patillo, we have put a lot on the table. We've been talking about the Jussie Smollett case. Just really, we're looking at judicial reform, which needs to happen. And I can't wait to hear from Attorney Prayer again about, I got to go back to you to talk about Judge Lynn, because wow, it seemed like, well, before I get to you, Robert, it seemed like it was so personal for him. It seemed that he was so angry. And did you think did he attack the member of Jussie's team, the defense team?
Did he lunge at her?
Did he lunge at her? I mean, I believe her.
I do too. She's one of the attorneys who I actually know. And she's not the type, she's not a drama queen. She's not seeking attention. So there would be no reason for her to make that up unless it actually happened. But again, that's the disadvantage of the public not being in the courtroom. She didn't have any public witnesses to back her up because we weren't in there to see it. They played a game of let us in and push us out and let us in and push us out. So, but I believe Ms. Walker, and I believe that that's what happened.
I do too. I mean, all I have to do is listen to him, and because his comportment, he appears to be a flamboyant kind of guy. But the fact that he turned off the cameras, but he wanted us to see him excoriate and just ream Jussie Smollett. He wanted that on camera, which I said, people need to be asking questions instead of, I'm hearing, from folks, oh my goodness, he's guilty, so I'm done. I'm like, honey, a lot of people are guilty of a lot of things, but this does not mean that this should happen to them. Attorney Robert Patillo, what do you make of all of this?
Well, it's interesting because with the case, I think as we talked about on Monday, that during sentencing, I think what the judge was looking for was a acceptance of guilt on the part of the defendant, an apology to the community, some indication that he had learned from the entire process. And normally that happens during sentencing to mitigate the amount of time you get. I think if that had happened, more than likely he would not have gotten definitely not that amount of time in custody, but probably no time at all. And so I think that's the message the judge was trying to send in the case, that he really was expecting to have a acceptance of the verdict and a sincere apology to the community. And I've always found that to be weird. When it comes to criminal justice reform, or when it comes to the power that happens in courtrooms, where it really is so capricious when it comes down to it, the way that plea deals are worked out. I've had a plea deal that blew up because my DA didn't have lunch one time and was just trying to get out the door. And that's a real story where somebody spent 6 years in jail instead of 3 years because the DA didn't have lunch that day. And I think when people realize the system is created in such a way where you put so much power in the hands of the judges and DAs, but yet so those are normally the races we pay the least amount of attention to. We don't really get interested in who the DA is until there's a high-profile police shooting, for example, or some kind of other high-profile prosecution. When people go into vote in during the election, you go, I'm going to vote for president, I got to vote for senator, I got to vote for governor, I got to vote for congressperson. Dang, there's still more pages here. Okay, let me vote for alderman or city council person, county commissioner. Dang, there's still some more pages. My park is running out. So we just hit some buttons towards the end. And those buttons you hit towards the end are often your judicial candidates and the people who have the most direct impact on criminal justice reform. So part of it is going to be an educational process where we can ensure that we're getting the proper information out to voters during election season. It's not enough simply to say just go vote. We have to make sure people understand what they're voting for, why they're voting, and these campaigns and candidates have to do a better job of articulating what separates them from the other candidates. Not so much fluff, not so much shiny, happy, smiling family pictures, but a real articulation of what they will be doing on the bench and how they can help to reform the system from the inside out. So I think that what the greatest takeaways have to be is just for people to be far more interactive. When it comes to the criminal justice system, go in, observe trials on your day off. I know that doesn't sound like the most fun, but go sit through criminal trials because it makes a difference to have community support and to ensure that things aren't happening in the darkness. Because even with Jussie Smollett being a quote-unquote celebrity, high-profile trial, there's so much that we did not see by not being in those courtrooms. So we have to ensure that we take an active part as a community to ensure that people are getting fair treatment when they are in the criminal justice system.
Everybody, because there is strength in numbers. Attorney Prayer. Before I go to the callers, the fact is his family were there with him every step of the way. I think that might have thrown Judge Lynn off. People really did want to be there, and people want to be there. We're concerned about his well-being. Who is Judge Lynn? I understand that he was not elected; he was appointed.
Yeah, that doesn't make much of a difference. I know there was a whole article, and I can't remember which paper yesterday. So yeah, in Illinois, in this county, you can either be elected or appointed. The appointed judges are basically selected by the appointed judges are basically selected by the elected judges. And normally you have to run to keep that seat, but there are some judges who are fortunate enough to be appointed over and over and over again. So he's been on the bench for years and years, more than 20 years. I've been appearing in front of him for at least 13. So I'm very familiar with Judge Lynn. He is a character. It is not unusual at all for him to give a scathing scolding of a defendant who is found guilty. However, what he did was unusual, calling him names. That was unusual, calling him a narcissist, saying he was a charlatan, saying, he should be ashamed of himself. That was all very much Judge Lynn playing to the cameras. That was very much him enjoying his moment in the sun and making the most of that. So he is a character. He it's unusual in his courtroom. You cannot do a plea deal with the state, but all plea deals must go through the judge. That's basically unheard of. That's the type of control he wants. He's extremely impatient, and we saw a lot of that with the trial. Like, he wants his trials to go. He wants them to go quickly. He wants them to go efficiently. And oftentimes he would keep the jurors there till 8 o'clock at night. Again, that's unheard of because many people got there on the bus. Many women have to walk to the garage by themselves at night in an area where they're concerned about being attacked. So he could care less. He just wants his trial to go quickly. And because of that, he rushed through the voir dire. Because of that, he treated at least the defense attorneys very poorly. I did see that and hear that with my own ears. So Judge Lynn is a character. He wants complete control in his courtroom. But in general, he runs a good trial. Like, normally he does run a good trial. Normally he does make good deals in terms of, reducing the amount of time that a client may be facing in general. But this case was unusual because it was a celebrity, because it was, as we say, a heater case, meaning it's in the media. And he had all eyes on him, and he took full advantage of that at the sentencing hearing.
Let me go to Noel from the South Side. Noel, what's on your mind?
Yes, good morning, Ms. Jackson. How you doing?
It's wonderful hearing your voice always.
Okay. People are missing the point. This wasn't about Jussie Smollett. This was about Kim Fox. Okay? When you go to the FOP website, for Federal Order of Police website, they have a list of their targets. That's Keith Ellis of Minnesota, Mosby of Baltimore, Kim Fox. You have Fannie Willis, Fulton County, and then you have Alan Brack of the Manhattan DA. So that's the reason. It's not because Jussie Smollett lied to the police. People lie to the police all the time. In Illinois, it's a class 4 misdemeanor. I was surprised he got jail time. No one ever gets jail time for lying to the police. This is not about Justice Smollett. This is about prosecutor going after police officers. And on top of the FOP list, like I said, is Keith Ellison of Minnesota. And next, number 2 on that list is Miss Mosley of what's her name?
Baltimore.
Maryland. Mm-hmm. So they have a list. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we see what she's going through right now. Okay. I mean, they're trying to put her and her husband in prison.
And people, this is not an opinion. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is on top of FOP list. That's how they listed these guys. Okay. So people should be aware of that. If you see any of these DAs getting in trouble, that's the reason. It's not because they committed some sort of crime. Well, it's because they're going after police officers for prosecuting people like Jason Van Dyke and the likes. Mm-hmm. And Freddie Gray of Baltimore. That's why.
Hold on, Attorney Prayer. Why don't you respond to what Noel's saying?
I respond with amen. He didn't miss a beat. He got it all right. It's absolutely about Kim Foxx. She did her own op-ed the day before mine ran in the Chicago Sun-Times, saying much of that. She's honestly been very classy about the whole matter. She's kept a tight lip. She did not try to interfere with the investigation. She didn't try to interfere with the second prosecution in any way. She waited for it to be completed to speak. But it really, and it sounds like a conspiracy theory. It really does. But it's not. It's factual. Like you said, they are trying to take down these so-called progressive prosecutors. She's the first Black female attorney to hold this position in Illinois. And so, of course, she's a target. I sat on many panels with Kim, and she talks about, hey, yeah, everybody wants to celebrate that I'm Black and female and I'm at the top, but I'm up against a 150-year culture that does not want me here. I have officers underneath me that won't even respond to anything that I ordered them to do. So, yes, it absolutely is about Kim Foxx. This absolutely was a political hack job. And Jesse literally just got caught in the middle. I'm telling you, I've had very similar cases where people walk away with community service. It is unheard of. His sentence was, in fact, excessive, and it's simply as a result of this political attack on Kim. He just happened to be the fall guy.
Let me go to Ron. Ron, what's on your mind? And thank you, Noel, for calling. Ron, what's on your mind today?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
I'm very surprised that no one seems to remember this incident a few years back. I don't know, was it 2 years, 3 years ago, downtown, underground, the lower level, where this couple, I think they were from New York, the white couple, had also committed a fraud in saying they were robbed on the underground tunnel down there, and they were proven to be lying. And there was no more said about that. I never heard anything else. It's just like they didn't want to prosecute them or anything. So that's a double standard right there. So I can't understand why nobody's ever talked about that.
So what do you make of this case, Mr. Ron?
I think that they have went way overboard against Mr. Smollett, and for various reasons, I couldn't understand one thing. If they were going to say that Mr. Smollett was guilty of what they're saying, how come these other two guys weren't also prosecuted for their part in it as being accessories?
Well, didn't they, Attorney Prayer, didn't they, an hour before they would have been charged with the felony, they changed their stories, right?
Yeah, but no, he has a good point. In Illinois, it's very, on the state level, it's very unusual for the prosecution to decide, we think these two people who were completely involved should be witnesses instead of defendants. What normally happens here is everybody gets charged and they say, we're going to let the judge and the jurors figure it out. And so for them to be identified as witnesses instead of defendants. Not only that, to have the Chicago Police Department then put them up in a hotel. And I kept bringing attention to this throughout the trial. This is unheard of. I have represented victims, or not victims, but witnesses on murders who the police basically said, oh, well, maybe you should just not go home for a while because we can't protect you. But instead, in a nonviolent case, they put up the two offenders in a hotel to supposedly, protect them. So there was a lot going on, and yes, it is very unusual, very suspicious that they decided, whether it was in the 47th hour or what hour, that they were going to use the Oshundaro brothers as witnesses against Jussie instead of co-conspirators with Jussie.
Robert Patillo, does this point to the need for judicial reform, not just police reform, but the judiciary appears to be really compromised?
Well, not just judicial reform, but judicial oversight. Because what we've seen often for lawyers who are in the courtroom, you'll see all sorts of crazy things that are on camera that aren't reported in the media, that nobody even will ever really hear about. And there's a way to report judges for really egregious actions, but for your individual client, it's often very difficult even to have something overturned on plain error on appeal because of the deference given to the trial court judges. So we have to really analyze, and I think this goes back to the issue of voting. We really have to analyze the people that we're putting on the bench and ensuring that we are truly vetting them as a community prior to simply giving them our vote. And that this isn't a black-white thing. It's a right-wrong thing when it comes to these elections. You have to ensure that you're looking at these people's backgrounds. And we also need more lawyers from the defense bar running for judge, because when you get a little later on in your career, you get into those nice 6-digit salaries, you really don't feel like going back to become a magistrate court judge or a state court judge, calling a calendar for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, those sorts of things. But that's where the rubber really hits the road when it comes to making these reforms. So we need more progressive, socially minded lawyers that hopping themselves into these election cycles. And then we also have to ensure that we are supporting them properly, donating to their campaigns, including them in those pamphlets and community booklets that we give out where we're endorsing and talking about candidates. That's simply on a question of who can make the biggest donation to be part of this this endorsement slate of candidates. But we're putting people in there who are really interested and have a record of working in criminal justice reform, but also being fair-minded and balanced, because we do want to ensure that the people who do need to be locked up are locked up, but that we are not making a mockery out of the system. Often judges stay on the bench so long they get something called robitis. Robitis is where you start thinking you're infallible and everything's right because you have that robe on, because there really is no accountability, particularly within your own fiefdom of your courtroom. So we have to start looking at those things. I think that this is a classical lesson for the next campaign cycle. We start seeing more people signing up to run to get some of these socially minded people on the bench, and that's the best way to affect change. Get more of these activists to get their JDs and to get out there and run for office, and then over the course of the next decade, we can start changing the complexion of the bench. And if you don't think it's possible, just what conservatives have been doing for the last 40 years on the federal bench. They figured out they could not beat Roe versus Wade and the civil rights movement in the streets, so they decided to entrench themselves in the judiciary so they could get a majority to overturn those things. We could do the same thing on the state and local level to overturn, to enact the type of criminal justice reform we've been fighting for generations.
Just very quickly, Attorney April Prayer, if you all could stay with me just for a couple minutes on my YouTube channel, just after we get off of WCPT and AM 950 radio, I invite all of you to come over there because I have a couple more questions for everyone. Donnie D has this question for you. Why don't you experts file a grievance against the judge? Is there no review board per se? I've got 2 minutes.
That's an excellent question. I'm just going to piggyback what was just said. One, there's blowback for the individual attorney who does so. So you have judges doing all kinds of stuff, sexual misconduct and acting out in all kinds of ways on the bench. And then the minute you file a grievance, one, you cannot set foot in front of that judge anymore because they will hurt your client. The other thing is you don't know who their friends are. And actually, my former law partner and I found this out in a very hard way. He had a whole campaign to take down a particular judge and was successful. But what we found out is he had a lot of friends in high places. So when I step into a courtroom, I don't know if you're buddies with the judge who I just reported. I don't know if you went to law school together. I don't know if you're his brother-in-law. And so it's much like how it is with the police, this whole blue wall of silence, and they all look out for each other. It's not that different with judges. And so there's a lot of blowback for your career if you report a particular judge, and there's not a whole lot of an upside to it. So you report a particular judge, now you are blacklisted amongst other judges. Now you are blacklisted by a lot of your peers because quiet as it's kept, Judge Lynn has a whole lot of fans.
I believe that.
Who have been coming to his who have been coming to his aid on Facebook, singing his praises. And so now you've also been blacklisted amongst your colleagues. And the judge probably won't even get a slap on the wrist. He'll get a copy of your nasty letter, and that will be the end of it.
Hold that
so
thought.
There isn't much judicial oversight.
No, hold
at
on.
all. So that is an excellent question.
No, it's an excellent question because it's the social side of things. You know, this is a lot more complicated, which is why you have to be a part of this process, everybody. I want you to stay with me on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on Santita Jackson and Friends. We're going to continue this conversation just for a few more minutes, but you have a board game, Attorney Prayer. What is the name of the board game and how can we get it?
Thank you, Santita. I appreciate you shouting out the game, but it's called Trials and Triumphs, and they can go to justusjunkie.store. That's justusjunkie.store. It teaches teens and their families how to stay safe when interacting with police and how to stay out of jail.
Because, you know, sadly, when we comply, so many of us die. There's something that's got to be done. Stay right here, everybody. Going to ask this magnificent panel a few more questions on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on the Santita Jackson and Friends official page, everybody. Like and share, Stay right here. Thank you, Devin, for a great show. Sending you all much love. Stay right here. Have a few more questions for these people. I can't wait to be with you tomorrow. God bless. Okay, so you were saying that these judges and their friends will retaliate when you report them. So what are you to do? I mean, and I'm going to ask you that, Attorney Prayer, and Robert and CK, because you can't have this much power that is unchecked.
You have to mobilize. And so like I mentioned in passing, my former law partner started something called JPAC, Judicial, I don't even remember what it stands for, Judicial Accountability Board or something like that. And what they do is they choose one judge each election season to go after. They look at that judge's sentencing record. They look at whether they sentence white defendants charged with the same crime for less time than they do black defendants. They look at their demeanor in court, and they actively campaign against them. And for the first time ever, they were able to get a judge off the bench. First time in 29 years, a judge who was just up for retention, meaning you just click the box and most people would just vote them in. They got him off. And so it was very scary for the other judges who were in the same position saying, am I going to be next? And so there were whisperings all around the courthouse about how to punish my law partner and me, even though it was his campaign, not mine. They affiliated me with him. And how are they going to get back at Brendan and April? And so there were judges actively talking about any client who April has in front of my courtroom, I'm going to bang. I'm going to max them out. I'm going to give them more time, regardless of the fact, regardless of who that individual was. And so in the past, when I've had problems with individual judges, rather than report, what I've done is stay away. So there's a judge at 26th Street. I have not set foot in his courtroom in 13 years, nor will I. I always joke that we have a quiet understanding that I won't come in the courtroom and we won't have any smoke. And I just stay away. And if a client calls me and says that they're assigned to that judge, I refer them to someone else.
See, but CK, that's why, because we've been having our Saturday morning forum at Push for 50 years. If people knew about this, there would be outrage. And I think people would respond, CK. We can't keep.
Well,
Oh, please help me.
Right. Well, a couple things, observations. One, there's some magnificent judges out there. Many, many. I've tried cases in front of some very, very difficult, and I would say almost crazy judges that would put all that you've seen on TV, that didn't even touch how touched some of the judges I've tried cases in front of for long periods of time. In one case, it was the jury that made the difference because the judge was determined to prevent us from getting our verdict. We got it anyway because of the jury. The jury leveled the playing field. It is difficult, but there are commissions. Like there's, and in Georgia, there are commissions that you can file claims, against a judge. You can complain against them, file complaints and all that kind of stuff. But just like anything, just like in the police department, there could be consequences to that. Individuals can file it, lawyers can file it. But if a judge is really, really bad and a judge's conduct is heinous, chances are across the board, a lot of people may feel that way. But it's dicey because judges have broad discretion and they have immunity. So you're not going to, because if you think about it, someone's going to, in a civil context, someone's winning and someone's losing, period. There aren't two winners, there aren't two losers. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. In a criminal context, someone's going down. Either the defendant will be acquitted or convicted. There's not kind of this way and kind of that way. So there's going to be a loser in this process, and the loser is always going to believe that the judge did something wrong. And sometimes the judge did abuse the discretion, and there could be appealable issues. That's different from a judicial temperament that's completely unacceptable and completely heinous. We have judges that are biased, that are racist, that don't like women, that don't like black people, don't like, anyone other than people who look like them. So there is recourse, but I don't want people to believe it's easy. I agree that it's very difficult. There could be ramifications for the lawyers. I focus less on that, but it's true. There could be ramifications for the lawyers. But I think that there is recourse. It's just not an easy journey. Just like it's not an easy journey when you want to, when you criticize anyone's conduct who's in a position of authority. But judges clearly have broad discretion. That's why they're elected as judges. So as opposed to looking at the back end, look at it at the front end. We have to be educated on who we're electing. Everybody has a track record, even if they haven't served as a judge. We can get information on everyone, so informing the public so they know who they're electing. And a lot of times people don't vote down ballot. They don't care. They don't believe that it makes a difference. But I think in seeing these cases on television and seeing the judicial temperament, whether they agree with it or not, has heightened people's understanding that it does matter who the judge is. It does matter who the next U.S. Supreme Court justice is. All of those things are now, people are more sensitive to it because they see it on social media. And there's an uproar and there's a lot of discussion on social media about these issues. So, but I don't want anyone to believe they don't have recourse. There is recourse. It's just tough.
Well,
very tough.
I think also seeing the Kyle Rittenhouse case heightened our awareness, watching the behavior of the lawyers in the Ahmaud Arbery case. We've had some cases that have helped us, to open our eyes. But I guess, with Attorney Prayer, and you are the chair of Rainbow Push, and of course the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push is Robert Patillo. In Chicago, we have something that's kind of unique because we've had the Saturday morning forum, right, where people come together and talk about the issues, and it's an internationally broadcast television show. And what has really helped Black people to be so organized in Chicago, and Chicago's an organizing town across all colors, because that's just what we do here. It's a very American city. We've got to become more active and engaged in our organizations and our churches so that people can know April, what you're going through, so that you can get the support that you need, so that you're not out here by yourself, because you're in that courthouse soldiering, fighting for us, but we don't know that. Attorney Prayer?
You know,
Yeah.
Oh, no,
yeah,
no, please, no, you all jump
absolutely.
in,
Yeah,
please.
No, I mean, it can be a very lonely experience. So the particular judge I was talking about, it wasn't just a matter of he ruled in a way I didn't like. It was that he berated me and screamed at me and screamed at all of my witnesses and then was deferential to the state's witnesses. It was that this was a never ending tirade for the 7 days of his trial, and it was murder. And so there was a lot at stake. And in situations like that, it can feel very lonely, especially when your colleagues are not on board, and especially when you know that there will likely be no consequences. Now, if you're a black judge on the bench, there can be significant consequences for you. If you're a white judge in Cook County, there's probably not going to be a lot of blowback, regardless of what the allegations are. So, yeah, so we are soldiering alone in court. Like Ms. Hoffler said, because this is in the public eye, the cases that are in the public eye are starting to change things. So yes, the Rittenhouse case was on TV. I'm on court TV as well about once a week. And so we talk about these high-profile cases, but the general public still doesn't know. They still don't ever peek behind the veil and see what happens on an average day in court. The number of court watchers per courthouse, we can probably each count on one hand. And so the ones that make it to social media, yes, they open the eyes of the general public, but most people honestly aren't watching us on court TV. And they don't know about the popcorn killer, and they don't know about all these other crazy cases across the land, or how these judges treat the litigants in front of them.
But that's why, you have radio shows like these, Robert Show, C.K. Hoffler Show. We have to begin to we can't wait for the corporate media or other people to amplify our issues. We're the ones who have to do it. I mean, we're the ones who have to make this happen. We're the ones who have to get out to the churches. We're the ones who have to make these issues matter to us, because so many of us have to interact with the system. I mean, all the time. And so, I invite you, and I said this to you last night when I spoke with you, please come back here whenever you want. Of course, before the week is out, CK, I want to bring her on to talk about her board game. Because, but people need to know you, and people need to know what you do. And you got to be out here. Because we need you.
Absolutely.
CK, you were going to say?
And yeah, and Santita, let me just continue on that. We need her voice. Yeah. We need her voice to be heard everywhere, because it's not. I operate more in the civil lane, so I'm rarely, and I don't even talk about any criminal defense work that I would do, because that's not my lane. I have been on a couple cases, but I don't talk about that because it's just not what my expertise is. But I will say, in a civil context, the same judges that are presiding over criminal cases are presiding over civil cases. And in a civil context where you don't necessarily lose your life or liberty, you're not, the penalty is not incarceration, but you can lose everything else, or there's a wrongful death action. And so in justice, when there's a miscarriage of justice, there's a miscarriage of justice, whether it's in a business context, a personal context, or any context. And a bad judge is a bad judge. So what I do want to just really, really underscore is that black judges face hell. Y'all have to hear me now. They face hell throughout the country.
What do you mean?
Black judges, when you talk about a double standard, it is the quintessential double standard for a black judge. So black judges, if they are, and they can be 100% correct on the law, when they are challenged, just think, they're challenged because a lot of people challenge them. They may be challenged them based on qualifications, whether they think they should be there. All we have to do is look and see what's happening with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who has qualifications up to wazoo, more than most will ever see, more than most of the folks that sit currently on the U.S. Supreme Court or that will be nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court, to know that there's a difference in treatment. So they go into the process, but it's no different than how black lawyers are treated differently. It's no different than how black women lawyers are treated differently. So these are the things I just want to bring to people's attention, that there are different sets of rules that exist. And if you're a practitioner, you understand those rules and you operate through those rules, because we are in a service industry, and the first and foremost, we represent our clients. That's what I am held. That's the standard I'm held to be a zealous advocate on behalf of my client, to represent my client to the best of my ability. That includes understanding the politics of a courtroom. That's why understanding the anatomy of a trial, understanding the politics of a trial, understanding how important it is to not have judges who have questionable backgrounds, who are completely biased for one reason or another, who allow their personal views to seep into what they do as a professional. That's why we have to keep our eye on that. And it's throughout the system, whether it's a state court judge, whether it's a municipal court judge, whether it's a state Supreme Court judge, whether it's a federal judge, whether it's a federal appellate court judge. And for people to understand, when you have a federal appointment as a judge, you have a position for life. For life. Now, there are judges who have been removed. There are judges that retire, federal judges who, leave for a number of reasons, but they're lifetime appointments. And that's why it's so critical to vet and screen and know who we are, the people who are being appointed, who are being vetted, who are being confirmed on a federal level, because there's a public process. On a statewide level, where people are elected, to make sure we know who they are. On the front end, it's tougher on the back end. It's tougher, but it's not over. Ahmaud Arbery's father, led by his father and his mother, got rid of a prosecutor by putting another candidate, a write-in candidate, up because Jackie Johnson was so corrupt in the way that she addressed their son's case, Ahmaud Arbery's case. It is possible to do that. It's just very difficult. The stars have to align. And there are consequences, I think as April said, in many cases when you do take that bold move. And you got to pick and choose who you identify as having such awful judicial temperament that you will go after. But I can tell you, for black judges, you can have great judicial temperament and people will go after you. Let's just be clear. That happens all the time.
Well, it is the black tax. Now it is. Well, let me throw this. But we've got to talk about those issues, because those are things Attorney Hoffler, Attorney Prayer, Attorney Patillo, that the lay people don't know. That we don't know the battles that you fight when you go into the courtroom and when you walk into the courthouse. We don't know that. Bill Freeman put this out here. He said he wrote Justice Smollett, a sentence that falls short of the crime. James Lynn sentenced Jussie Smollett to 30 months of felony probation, including 150 days in county jail, and ordered him to pay restitution to the city of Chicago of $120,000 and a $25,000 fine. Let me see. He said this is the final act in Smollett's December 2021 5-count felony disorderly conviction. And the impact of his crime did not conclude its sentencing. I'm trying to find out what you're saying, Bill. I think that there's some people who agree with what happened with Jussie Smollett. I don't. And I want you to tell me, Bill, what you think about these men who rape these children and who have no time. How are they going to pay these children back? How are they going to pay back their families? How are they going to pay back the state for the money that was spent? I want you to know, I want someone to tell me how these pedophiles are walking around amongst us, free and clear. And you were a deputy sheriff? Are you for real? At some point, what, is child rape okay with you? We've got to stop this.
It's not okay with it's not okay.
It's not over the government. Is that okay with you? Because these rioters, these people who committed treason on January 6th they were charged with misdemeanors. While Dr. King was hounded to death by our own intelligence community, and we're doing that with Black Lives Matter today. Help me. I want to know. Hello? Y'all there?
Yeah, I'll chime in about the election.
No, there's a need for criminal justice reform. I was listening to you. I didn't mean not to. Sorry.
No,
there's
it's
a need
okay.
for criminal justice reform across the board, whether on so many levels, in sentencing and sentencing and probation and policing or related policing reform. There's a need for an overhaul on a federal level, and as well as on state levels. And until there's federal overhaul, then we're going to have the inconsistent applications in different states, and political issues will come in the middle. Because I can tell you, Ahmaud Arbery's case could have just gone completely unprosecuted. Mm-hmm. Like many cases that are even more heinous than that have gone completely unprosecuted. So, no, it's uneven. I mean, let's just talk about what's happening in Chicago. I was in an Uber coming on the, I forget the name, the freeway, and I heard something that sounded like gunshots because people are getting shot on the freeway. And I just ducked and laid on the back of the seat the entire time going to the hotel. That's, to me, if we want to focus on prosecuting crimes and prosecuting real crimes, and it's not that, and I'm assuming, I'm not passing judgment of whether Jussie Smollett did or didn't do what he did. The jury has spoken, so he's convicted. So let's assume he did what he did. Let's assume what they're saying he did and what the jury said he did. Let's assume that's the case. Not necessarily that I agree, but let's assume that's the case. Still, there are heinous crimes that are committed every single day where someone's life is lost. And people lie to the police every day. How about this? People lie on the witness stand every single day, commit perjury every single day. I would dare say every expert witness, or many expert witnesses, not every, many expert witnesses that I've cross-examined lie. They perjure themselves. I catch them in inconsistent statements. Inconsistent statements, that's another word for a lie. You said this on X day, I asked you the question, you answered it this way, and then today you're coming and telling this jury something completely different, and I've asked you the same question. You lied. I can't say lie in a civil case. I could say misrepresentation, what versus, but if we're going to be technical about it, people go into court every single solitary day and perjure themselves and lie to the police giving statements. And so if that's going to be the barometer, then a lot of people would be in jail. A lot of people would be where Jussie Smollett is. What about the Osundayo brothers?
Oh.
So I think, there's a complete, there's a need for an overhaul in the criminal justice system. That's true. But I think that we have to be careful when we talk about, well, so-and-so should be prosecuted because they perjured themselves, because that would mean a whole lot of people in civil cases, highly skilled professionals who are paid a lot of money. That would mean that they need to be prosecuted as well. And, of course, I'm not in favor of that. I'm pointing out the lunacy or the ridiculous nature of the notion that everybody should be prosecuted for perjuring themselves, because that's another thing, the judges are now throwing at defendants. Well, you perjured yourself, and we should prosecute you for that. I mean, I think that there's a need for criminal justice reform and an overhaul, complete overhaul.
Oh my gosh. Attorney Prayer, Robert Patillo, if you're still there before we go.
I would agree that probably just about every case there is, somebody perjures themselves. Somebody lies. Somebody lies to police. That's why we have the term recant, meaning that on almost every major violent crime, a witness comes forward and says one statement, and it's almost inevitable that before trial, they'll take the statement back, change it in significant ways, and those people aren't being prosecuted. And I see that on almost every case I have. And so when Judge Lynn went so far as to say that Jussie perjured himself, and I agree, assuming Jussie did everything he was convicted of, everything he was charged with, everything he was accused of, even if that's the case, I think it's dangerous for a judge to deem that perjury and challenge Jesse and say that he should not have exercised his constitutional right by taking the stand. You always have a right to take the stand in your own defense. You always have a right to testify in your own matter. And so I think it becomes very tricky when judges are calling that perjury. And we know full well that probably 10 cops in the next courtroom lied that same day or in his same courtroom the day before this happened, and there were no consequences. You got to remember, this is the same building where not only Van Dyke was tried for killing Laquan McDonald, but his 3 co-conspirators were tried for lying and falsifying police reports, and all were acquitted. The judge literally said, I'm not going to believe my eyes, what I see on this camera. I'm going to believe these 3 lying defendants and cut them loose. Why? Because she's pro-cop. And they knew that when they went into her courtroom. That's why they did a bench and not a jury. Like the whole system, I always joke when I talk to teens, that's how I spend most of my time these days, is that we need to burn the whole system down. Like, we need to just start again. And in the meantime, you all need to know how the insides of this system work so that you can protect yourself.
Well, you've got to come back on the show. Because, I think that as we talk about reconstructing the system, because we have to come up with a system that works. And I'd like for us to begin to have those conversations about what the system ought to be like. If you're innocent until proven guilty, then that's the kind of system you need. But the fact is, the kind of government that we have on paper is a very mature form of government, and it requires that all of us get involved, and many of us are not. And you cannot. This is what happens when we are not involved in a government of, for, and by the people. This is what happens. The wheels come off. They come off. They come off. And it becomes, you look unusual and crazy when you decide to become active in the system and become an activist in the system. You got to get involved, everybody. You've got to get involved. Otherwise, you might as well have a monarchy where somebody else is in charge and they tax you to death and they own everything and you just work for them. Now, if you don't want that, you better get involved. I tell you that, because this is a lot. Robert, are you still there?
I'm still here, and I just kind of will end by saying that I think there's a reason that so many lawyers, after a decade or so in practice, get very disenchanted with the system and start opening bakeries and dog grooming places, because the system is very much broken. And it's hard when you have so much cop propaganda and judicial propaganda in the media, kind of showing this role of the super cop. Think about the courtroom dramas that you watch, where the judges is kind of this fair and even arbiter who doesn't get involved in the case. That's just not reality of what happens in courtrooms. People are generally shocked their first time being involved in the criminal justice system by the actual way that it is conducted. So I think because of that, we have to do a better job of educating the public on what is and is not going on in those courtrooms, and also ensuring that we are getting the right people on the benches, the right people behind the prosecutor's table, getting rid of that super highway that exists between the prosecution table and the bench, where often you'll go into court and you are arguing against the prosecutor and the judge, because the judge is a former prosecutor who used to work with that prosecutor's office. And also ensuring that we're getting the right people on the police force, so that we don't have a several-year-long witch hunt over something as minor as this, really dominating national attention. We joked on my radio show yesterday that Friday the House of Representatives passed a $1.5 trillion budget with almost no debate. They dropped the bill on Wednesday. They passed it on Friday, and that got less attention than the Jussie Smollett sentencing, for example. So we have to make sure that we're providing the proper attention on some of the bigger issues, particularly in the election cycle that we're in right now, so that if you do not like the people on the bench, you do not like the prosecutors, this is your opportunity to replace them.
CK, your closing thought? Was she there? Attorney Prayer?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm sorry. I was
Oh,
my
no.
mute.
Honey, it's okay, girl. I know I've
No,
got you all in the middle of your day. I'm so glad that you all stayed with me just a little longer.
Well, my closing thoughts really just to remind everyone to be engaged. To be engaged. I mean, on some, Robert, I was laughing hysterically because of the manner in which Robert expresses himself when he talked about dog grooming places and the like, because he's hilarious, of course.
I was about to say, is he for real right now? Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what?
The truth of the matter
it is true.
The truth of the matter is
true.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is people just really, truly are tired. They're disenfranchised. They feel that if they can't win, why continue this fight when there doesn't seem to be, any justice in the end? So that's number one. But I think it's important to stay engaged because, Rome wasn't changed overnight, and for there to be criminal justice reform, it's going to take the collective efforts of civil rights organizations, human rights organizations, as well as the legal community, lawyers that are saying enough is enough, because it's really not working for anyone. It's not really working for the judges that well either. It's not really working. It may be working better for them because they have less discretion and oversight than we do, but it's not working for the practitioners on either side. It's not working for the clients, the people who are in the system on either side. And so there's a need for reform, and people are getting tired. The public is getting tired of hearing this narrative. So there's a need for reform because something's going to happen when, at the end of the day, you can, of course, if there were Black people doing the insurrection, it would have been different. So let's just be clear on that. The outcome would have been completely different if the insurrections had been led by Black folks, because I don't want anyone to believe that it would have been a misdemeanor under those circumstances. But I do think that if we don't do something to change the system, we're going to be in a state of anarchy.
But we're headed there. I mean, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but all you have to do is look. If you just look around and see, number one, people do not trust, what is it, the fourth estate, the press. Now, the media, it's become the media. When you turn on the news, you don't even get a report. You get opinions. They bring on this expert, that expert. They don't have any reporters doing any reporting anymore. And no one trusts the news. You just don't trust them. No one trusts the government. You just don't trust them. The authority, you don't trust the medical establishment. Nobody is trusted right now, and we are in a dangerous place. And the mistrust and distrust has been earned. So we got to make some decisions about where we want to be. Because let me tell you, we did a nonviolent revolution with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. That's how we get down. Other folks raid the Capitol. Hello. Okay? So I think we need to get real. And America was born of sedition and insurrection. We were born of revolution. That's what we do. So think about that, everybody. Think about it. Attorney Prayer, again, your board game, I'm going to have you back before the week is out so you can talk about it. But you have a closing thought?
I do. I was mulling that over while they were talking. Two things. I never thought I'd say this. As much as I hated every moment of law school, we need more Black lawyers. And I recently saw a statistic saying that, Black attorneys only make up less than 5% of the bar. But get this, that statistic has not changed since 2011.
Wow.
So that tells you, even though we're 14% of the population, we're about 4%, a little bit more than 4% of the bar, and Black women are only 1.78% of that number, of the total bar. So we need more Black lawyers, because until we can burn the system down, we definitely need to be able to turn it inside out. And then along those lines, show up for jury duty and don't act a fool. And I say it just like that, because people who could be excellent jurors, Black folks who actually do show up, who we would love to have on the jury just because they would be fair-minded, actually listen, have some common sense, say something outrageous like, I hate all cops, I can't be fair, this is too similar to what happened to me 35 years ago. And they actively try to get off the jury, leaving us oftentimes with an all-white jury pool or all white jury. And so just show up to jury duty and do your part. And then while you're there, you'll actually learn a lot about what happens. You won't learn everything, but you'll learn a lot about what happens inside of the courtroom. You'll learn about how significant it is when the judge has a bad temperament. You'll learn about who goes first in the order of proceedings. You'll see a lot. And the thing is, you can have a really significant impact. So instead of complaining and shaking your finger at social media, or shaking your finger at TV when a Rittenhouse verdict comes down or another verdict that you don't agree with, actually show up to do your part for the person who's having their day in court, because you can really turn things around.
Amen to that. And, and get involved, everybody. Get involved in organizations. March. But don't just march. Get involved with your elected officials on the local, county, state, federal level. Your engagement in the election process, in the electoral process, in politics cannot begin and end at the booth, the voting booth. It just can't. Your engagement as a citizen can't just be that I'm a citizen. No, you can't just be I live here. You have to be a citizen. You have to be actively engaged. And you need to pay attention to the news. And you need to push and push and push so that you can get more and more news so that you can make more informed decisions. Informed decisions. I just saw a note on my Facebook chat from a lovely gentleman, bless his heart. He wants to know why I'm sounding so pro. What did you say? Bless your heart. And I will address you tomorrow on the air, Stephen Hurt. You said some of my guests sound like NATO has attacked Russia. Look, what you hear from me is someone who's pro-peace. And so I want to hear all sides. I'm from a family of 5 children. And my parents knew each of our proclivities. Okay? They were kind of clear who was going to start this, who was going to take that. But when they were resolving a conflict, there was none of that. They had us all literally sit down at a table. From your perspective, yours. What happened? Now, then they double back and say, now I know, Santina, you're going to do this. Jesse, you're going to do that. Jackie, Yusuf, Jonathan. Boom. Okay? So now what happened here? They're going to unravel it until they get to the issue at hand. What drove this so that we can resolve this and not have to do this again? That's what I've been trying to do with all of this. And to understand, I want you to understand now, Russia has Europe on the west and China on the east. And they are allied with China. You cannot continue to have a 20th century view of the United States, let alone a 19th century view. This is 2022. China is the biggest economy on earth, everybody. It is. The global South, African nations, Southeast Asian nations have pushed back on this conflict. They don't have the same view that Western European nations have and the United States. We need to understand that these people have the oil, they have the minerals, they have everything you need, everything you need to have your cell phone run and your computer run comes out of Africa. We need to get along with people. And we need to have a system in the United States that we trust. Attorney Prayer, I don't want to burn it down, but I do want to completely reform it. Completely. But as we reform it, we need to construct a system the system that we want. No, I don't want some burning embers. What I want is for us to decide the kind of system that we need, because we're not even involved in what we got, which is not smart. We've got to be involved, everybody. Other people are involved, and the system works for the people who are involved in it. But for those of us who are actively disengaged or who disengage ourselves, the system won't work for you. It won't work for you. So please, everybody, and Attorney Prayer, I want you to come back. You are a gift, and I thank you for your work. And I just hope you know, from having met Attorney Patillo and Attorney Hoffler, that you are not alone.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an honor, and it's been an honor to meet your two guests, and I hope we will connect off air.
Oh, I'll make sure that happens shortly. CK, we've got to connect with and Robert, we've got to connect with Attorney Prayer. And I'm going to have you back on the show before the week is out so that you can talk about this board game. Because you need to walk us through that, CK. How does that work? How does that work? How do you engage the system and live to tell the tale? How about that? Because that's the thing. How do we live to tell the tale? Oh, absolutely. So God bless you. God bless you. Sending you much love, Attorney Prayer, Attorney Hoffler, and Attorney Patillo. And Devin, thank you for a great show, Mr. Andrekas. Sending you all much love, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. Everybody like and share this show. Everybody like and share, like and share. Like and share, like and share. Everybody, please share the show. Share it, share it, share it. And again, what is the name of your game and how can we get it?
It is called Trials and Triumphs, and they can go to justusjunkie.store, justusjunkie.store, justusjunkie.store.
You all remember Just Us. You remember when Richard Pryor used to talk about that. That's what she's saying. JUSTUS, Just Us. Junkie. I love it. I love it. God bless you. And thank you so much for making the show today. God bless you. Love you, everybody. Thank you, Nicole and Kenneth. And thank you, Laura. Everybody share the show. Please share the show. Please share. My family, my Morning Stars family. Thank you, Norma. Everybody share the show. Just share it with at least one person today. With one person. Just share. Just share. I love everybody. Thank you, Devin. Have a good one, everybody. God bless.